Hello and welcome back to our study of Peninei Halacha, the teachings of Rav Eliezer Melamed Shlit. We hope that everyone had an enjoyable Chag HaPesach as we move on to our next series. The topic at hand, of course, we'll do in Yana Dioma is the Mitzvah of Sefirat Ha'Omer, perhaps one of the most exciting yet challenging mitzvahs to fulfill because it takes such a long time. So, in Parak Beis, Hilchos Sefirat Ha'Omer, in the Sefer called Zamanim, the Rav states, Mitzvah lispor milal k'tzir ha'omer, tisha v'arba'im yom shehem shiv'a shavuos. There is a mitzvah, a commandment, to count from the time of the cutting of the Omer, 49 days, which is, of course, 7 weeks. Leil k'tzir ha'omer, hu leil tezayin b'nisan, hechel b'motzai yontov rishon shel Pesach. And the night of the cutting of the Omer is immediately after the first day of Yom Tov, so that's the night of the 16th. Yom Tov is on the 15th, so at the conclusion of that, Uvo hayom yotzim v'kotzrim shorim, mevim osam la'azara, v'dashim osam, v'zor osam beruach, uvorim osam v'pesoles, v'kolam es ha'gargerim ba'esh, v'tochnim osam heitev, mitoch ha'kemach lokchem shir asira saifa. There was a whole process that was done in the time of the Beis HaMikdash, where they would take the grain, and they would do threshing and winnowing, etc., and they would ground it up until they have fine flour, which they would use for the offerings. And they would sift it, and they would mix it with oil, and have all sorts of mixtures. And then afterwards, they would bring this offering on the Mizbeach. Tchila haya kohen menifo. First, the Kohen would wave this. That's why it's called the Hanifa, the waving of the Omer. And then afterwards, he would use as he would do with a normal mincha offering, and he would bring it on the Mizbeach. And through the bringing of this offering, this is what would be allowed for everyone to have what's called chadash, from the new grain. So sometimes you'll see on kosher food products it says made from kemach yashan, which literally means old flour, but this of course relates to this halacha, and many people are very, very careful in terms of the flour that they eat, whether it's yashan or chadash. V'yesh l'das, ki l'chag ha'shavuos ein ta'arich chodshi ki dugma shar ha'chagim. It says we have to understand that when it comes to Shavuos, Shavuos does not have a set calendaric date mentioned in the Torah like other holidays. Lamashal, Zamano shel Chag HaPesach b'Tesvav b'Nisan. We know that, as we just celebrated, that Pesach is observed on the 15th of Nisan, v'shel Chag HaSukkos b'Tesvav b'Tishrei, and Sukkot is on the 15th of Tishrei. Ulam Zmano shel Chag HaShavuos nikma al pi Sefirat Ha'Omer. However, when it comes to Shavuos, Shavuos is determined not by the calendar, but by the counting of the Omer. Sha'achar siyum sefiras shiv'a shavuos magia zamano shel Chag HaShavuos. Because we know that when we finish counting the 7 weeks, that's when Shavuos comes. V'alkei nikra shemo Chag HaShavuos. And that's why it's called the Festival of Shavuos, which is weeks, the Festival of Weeks. V'zehu shenemar, shiva shavuos tispar lach me'achel chermesh b'akamat tachel lispar shiva shavuos. V'asisa chag shavuos l'Hashem Elokecha. Pasuk says in Parshas Re'eh that you have to count for yourself 7 weeks. And again, talking from the beginning of the offering of this grain, you count 7 weeks, and then you make the festival of Shavuos. And it says also in Parshas Emor, which we just read on Pesach, Usfartem lechem imacharas ha-Shabbos miyom ha'viachem es omer ha'tenufa, Sheva Shabbasos Tvimos Tehiyana, Abi Macharas HaShabbos HaShvi'is, Tisperu Chamishim Yom V'Hikravtem Mincha Chadasha LaHashem. Also, the Psukim and Emor relating the celebration or the observance of Shavuos to the Karban HaOmer. U'mitzvah zu einu mitelas rak al Beis Din, ela mitzvah al kol echad v'echad Yisrael lispor 49 yamim. And this mitzvah, this commandment of counting, is not only on the Jewish court, but it's on every single individual. U'mitzvah al kol echad lomer es ha-sfira ba'atzmo, and there's a mitzvah for everyone to say the sfira for him or herself. V'av shebechol ha-mitzvah shebedibur, yesh lanu klal shamea ka'oneh. And even though we have, when it comes to other mitzvahs that require speech, we have something called shamea ka'oneh, where it is, I could say it and have you in mind, and then you could fulfill your obligation. So before Purim, when we talked about Parsha Zachar, we read about Amalek. So if I hear the Balkriya read the story of Amalek, and I have in mind I'm Yotzei the mitzvah, even though I didn't actually read it, I just heard it. And so also somebody could also be Yotzei the bracha, the blessing on the Omer from the leader, as we do it in shul each evening. Usually it's the rabbi who leads in the bracha. Avalanian had Sefirat Atzma, but that's as far as the blessing goes. But as far as the actual counting of the days, Kivan Shneimar Usfartem Lochem, because the pasuk says, "You shall count for yourselves." Ladas Kama Poskim Tzarech Kol Adam Lismor Ba'asmo Befiv. So Chazal teach us that this means that everyone has to count personally for himself out loud. V'amnam yesh sovrim shedin hasvira kedin shar hamitzvah shebedibor v'yachal adam lotzeis yidecha v'aseh b'shmias chavero. However, there are other opinions that hold that, like other spoken mitzvos, that if you hear someone else do it and they have you in mind, that you could be yotzei. Alashid lechatchila anachnu rotzim lotzeis yidei kol hadeyos l'chein tzarech kol echad lispar ba'atzmo. But since we want to do this in its optimal performance, we want to make sure that every single person counts for him or for herself. Just as a side note, it's a good opportunity to bring family together. We have a family chat where we remind everybody each night to count, make sure that they count. There are different methods of remembering. You could sign up for email reminders, text reminders, WhatsApp reminders, but it's something that one should do for oneself. Yisod ha-mitzvah bereishis hisavusa la'am. So this mitzvah goes back to the foundation of our becoming a nation. Ubiro Chazal, the rabbis teach us that after the Jewish people were slaves in Egypt, and they had sunk so low to the 49th level of impurity, they were not fit to receive the Holy Torah. And they had to be purified from the impurity of Egypt. So therefore, the 49 days, the 7 weeks corresponds to these 49 levels. They needed time to take away each level of impurity, each of the 49, so they could get to a level where they could receive the Torah. And we also have, since we're counting up, we have this notion of waiting, eagerly exciting, anticipating the giving of the Torah. And the Medrash explains, "Sheka'asher biser Moshe Yisrael she'achar tzeisam mitzrayim yavdu es Hashem al har Sinai v'kablu es haTorah," that when the Jews left Egypt, and Moshe told the Jewish people that after you leave, you're going to serve Hashem on Har Sinai, you're going to receive the Torah. Sha'aluhu, they asked the following question: Emasai tiyavodazu, when will this service take place? Amar lahem l'sav chamishim yom. He said at the end of 50 days. And since they knew it was in 50 days, they would say each day out of love, Harei Avar Yom Rishon, Harei Avar Yom Sheni, V'chein V'chol Yomim. They were counting down or counting up to this blessed event. Oh, 1 day has passed, 2 days have passed, 3 days have passed. And each day they would count like this. Because since they were filled with love and their anticipation and excitement for the Torah, so it would seem like a very long time, but they waited with anticipation. So Nimtza Imkain, Shebesfiras Omer, Ba'alidei Bitui Hatzipia V'Hakamiyah Shalana Likrasya Yom Hagadol, Yom Matan Torah. Therefore, when it comes to Sefirat Ha'Omer, by also saying it out loud, we're talking about our anticipation, our excitement as we approach the big day of the giving of the Torah, which of course is on Shavuos. V'toch kach anu avrim tahalich shel hitaharus, and this is a path of purity, of purifying ourselves. B'chol mem tesa madrigosha adam kolomehem, and we can exit the 49 levels of impurity and ascend the 49 levels of purity. And the more pure one is, or the further away one is from impurity, then the more he'll be able to receive the light of the Torah. He says that's why each year, even though we counted it last year and the year before, but every time we count, we are preparing ourselves for the giving of the Torah, trying to purify ourselves, bring ourselves into a better state, so that this year in Kabbalah Satorah will be even a more purified and holy state, and we will be able to be Kabbalah Satorah be Simcha. I want to welcome everyone back. Hope everyone had a great Chag. We'll continue our study of the teachings of Peninei Halacha, Rav Eliezer Melamed, and we'll do this topic of Sefirat Ha'Omer for a short while. And once again, thank you for listening. We'll see you here next time. Have a wonderful day.